record of um, breaking laws and regulations, destroying the environment, and abusing human rights all over the world. And just as a few examples of that, in Point Comfort, Texas, where Diane is calling in from, Formosa Plastics was subject to the largest citizen-brought Clean Water Act settlement in U.S. history, but continues to disregard a court-ordered zero discharge of plastic mandate, racking up over 600 violations and counting. In spite of not being able to operate its existing facilities within the law, Formosa Plastics plans to expand the facility. And Diane's going to tell us a bit more about that fight. In St. James Parish, Louisiana, activists are opposing Formosa's 2,400-acre, $12 billion petrochemical complex, the so-called Sunshine Project, slated to be built in Cancer Alley, an area already inundated with over 200 industrial facilities and home to cancer rates in the top 5% of the US. And in central Vietnam, a steel plant owned by Formosa Plastics Group was responsible for a chemical spill considered Vietnam's worst environmental disaster. After fishing grounds were destroyed, the victims whose livelihoods were ruined have yet to see compensation. And over 20 activists remain in prison for speaking out for this cause. And we're going to hear from Miss Nancy here on the call about the fight for justice for Formosa victims in Vietnam. So that's a bit about the company that we're fighting against. But I wanted to share a bit about our movement as well for people who are a little newer to this fight, and tell you about the International Monitor Formosa Plastics Alliance, which is a unique coalition consisting of 3 separate organizations fighting against Formosa Plastics in the 3 locations that I just talked about. So we have Justice for Formosa Victims in Vietnam, Rise St. James in Louisiana, and San Antonio Bay Estuarine Waterkeeper in Texas. And these are 3 groups and 3 environmental justice leaders, including Diane and Nancy here on the call, and Ms. Sharon Levine, an incredible environmental justice leader with Rise St. James, who wasn't able to join us today because she's in New York City as a part of Climate Week, actually being honored with the Time 100 Award. So sad that Ms. Sharon couldn't be here today, but she's here in spirit and is very eager to have all of y'all join the movement. And thank you, Alex, for dropping that story in the chat. So coming together to combat this multinational corporation, Formosa Plastics Group, our alliance represents a very powerful force united in the pursuit of environmental protection, justice, and community empowerment. And just to tell you a bit about the story of how it came together, in March 2019, Nancy here on the call organized the coalition of Vietnamese Americans to journey to Point Comfort, Texas, to support Diane Wilson in her Citizen Clean Water Act lawsuit against Formosa for long-standing plastic discharge into Matagorda Bay. And Sharon Levine, who leads the opposition against Formosa Plastics in Louisiana, showed up in support as well. And so that's where the alliance was born. And these 3 women and the larger coalition have been fighting together ever since. And so just to tell you a bit about this action on August 2nd, where these arrests took place, before I hand it over to Diane to take the mic, as a part of the Summer of Heat on Wall Street, which was a sustained season of direct actions lasting all summer long, targeting banks and other financial institutions, demanding that they stop financing fossil fuel and petrochemical projects that are perpetuating environmental racism in places like the Gulf South, in the Ohio River Valley, and other parts of the country. Diane and Nancy and Sharon and many, many others from their coalition and from across New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, came together to hold a direct action at the Formosa Plastics US headquarters in Livingston, New Jersey. And there were over 100 people there marching on the streets, and several of us blockaded the front entrances, all the entrances actually going into the office, and were able to shut down work at the US headquarters of this giant company for the better part of a day. And so it was a huge victory. And I'll let Diane and Nancy and others talk about what that was like. But 6 of us were arrested at that action, including, I'll just shout out Alex Gordon here on the call from Break Free from Plastics, and Reverend Chelsea from Green Faith, which was another organization involved in that action. And 4 of us are continuing on to trial with our case after being charged with criminal trespass. We are saying that in spite of ourselves being charged with trespass, Formosa Plastics has been trespassing in our communities. And so it's not us, but rather Formosa Plastics that should be put on trial. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane to talk about her fight. I will just say, I'm sorry, real quick, that part of the reason that we're here today is we all 4 have a pre-trial hearing coming up on Thursday, the 26th at 8 a.m. Central and 9 a.m. Eastern. And we would love for all of you here to join us there virtually in the Zoom court. But even more especially, would love for you to join us in person in trial in New Jersey once that gets scheduled, probably this fall. And thank you to Alex for dropping that in the chat. So Diane, I'm going to turn it over to you. Diane Wilson is a 4th-generation shrimper and longtime environmental activist. Let me just pull up your bio, Diane, because there's lots to say. And the executive director of the San Antonio Bay Estuarine Waterkeeper on the Texas Gulf Coast. She's a Goldman Environmental Prize winner who won a landmark case against Formosa Plastics for the illegal dumping of toxic plastic waste on Texas Gulf Coast. So the $50 million settlement that she won is the largest award in a citizen suit against an industrial polluter in the history of the U.S. Clean Water Act. So Diane, please tell us a bit about your fight against Formosa Plastics and why you took action on August 2nd at the U.S. headquarters.
Okay, I'll tell you a little story, but first of all, I wanted to let y'all know that I know they always talk about that large settlement I got with Formosa Plastics back in 2019, but it took me 35 years of really civil disobedience in my hometown, because where Formosa came into, and they came into from Taiwan, they came to either Texas or Louisiana, whichever one was going to give them the most. And Texas agreed to give them everything they wanted. So instead of building a huge plastic facility in Taiwan, YC Wong, Formosa Plastics, a family dynasty, they came to Texas. And part of the deal was they told Formosa they wouldn't have to do any federal studies. They wouldn't have to go through any permit hearings. They were going to get $250 million in tax abatements. All of their visas were going to be put on a fast track. They were even going to let them dig a Superfund site, and it was pretty much anything they wanted. And so they promised them their environmental record in Taiwan would not be brought up. And Formosa was an egregious polluter in Taiwan. And so basically, here I am, 4th-generation fisherwoman, minding my own business, working at a fish house, running a shrimp boat. And I had a shrimper who had like 4 different types of cancer. And he had lumps all over his arm. And one day I was working at the fish house, which is where all of the shrimp boats come and they unload their catch. and I took care of about 14 boats and shrimpers and shrimp and loading it and all of this stuff. Anyway, the shrimper came in and threw a newspaper at me, and it was front page, and it was the first time that the toxic release inventory was ever made public. This was the community right to know. Um, and I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this before. And the reason why we did get the community right to know and the TRI data was because of what happened in Bhopal, India, and so many people died. So the deal was we were not going to let this happen in the United States. So they passed the TRI. The first time it came out, my little bitty county on the Texas Gulf Coast was #1 in the nation. And this shipper pitched me this article and said, well, what are you going to do about it, Diane? And I am uh, a real introvert, and I like quietness. I like the boat's silence. I don't like talking. I don't like meetings. I'm not very sociable. And I acted totally out of character and went down to our little bitty city hall in Seadrift, and I asked for a meeting about that being #1 in the county and in the nation for toxic disposal. Matter of fact, we had half the toxic waste that was generated in the state of Texas in landfills right there in our county. And so almost immediately after just simply requesting for a meeting, within a day, I had the bank president down at the fish house, and the bank presidents never go down to the fish house. And there he was, and he came out on the docks and he said, Diane, are you fixing to start a vigilante group to roast industry alive? And it's like, I knew nothing about industry. I didn't know about permits. I didn't know where they were located. I didn't know what they made. I knew zero. And suddenly I had everybody in the sun that was coming down that telling me to stop what I was doing. I need to call off the meeting. I was having people call my brothers and tell them, stop your sister. And it's like, I haven't even did anything. And so basically what was going on is not only were we #1 in the nation for toxic disposal, but it just so happened that was almost the very month Formosa Plastics was going to do the biggest chemical expansion Texas ever had, the biggest in the United States in 10 years, and no questions, no permit hearings. Nobody was going to talk about their violations in Taiwan. And here I came up with this meeting, and people were wondered who in the Sam Hill I was and what was I doing asking for a hearing. And so basically, believe it or not, my venture into the environmental activism was like a snowball rolling to hell. It started in 1989 when I was 40 years old, and it hasn't stopped since day one. And here I am, 75 years old. I have been 35 years, and I'm still fighting these chemical companies. And mainly, you know, I'm a high school graduate. That's it. I am not a scientist. I don't have any kind of degree. I got 5 kids. I was a fourth generation fisherwoman. And the only thing I knew was the bay and the fish houses and the boats and fishermen. That's all I knew. But the thing of it was, is I had a real passion for that bay. And when I found out about Formosa and found out the record, I was like, they are not going to destroy the bay. They are not going to do it. And it was like, I think a lot of times I was fortunate that I wasn't too educated because I didn't know what I was going up against and saying they were going to stop. Because I know since the state of Texas had pretty much told them, you can do anything you want. You can get anything you want. We're going to give you all these tax abatements. And they were literally hiring the mayors of the county. They were hiring the senators. They were hiring anyone with any type of position of authority. Formosa was hiring them to be contractors with them. And it was a payoff. And so basically, Formosa was going to get every single thing. And I remember one time, uh, you know, I worked inside the box. In the beginning, I knew nothing. So I tried to do a petition. I tried to do a permit hearing request. I tried to write letters. I tried to have meetings. And I had more industry and chamber of commerce in my meetings harassing me than citizens. And pretty much it eventually got to the point. I remember a real savvy activist out of Houston told me, he said, Diane, he said, you're at the end of the parade. It's a sweetheart deal. They're going to get what they're going to get. And he said, just pat yourself on the shoulder, say you did a good job, but this is it. Just know this is it. And and I said, they're not going to get that bay. And he's like, he said, there's nothing you can do to stop it. And I mean, literally off the top of my head, I said, I'm going to do a hunger strike. And
Mm,
he got the biggest kick out of that. He said, nobody does hunger strikes in Texas. He said, they may be in California, but he said, they pay no attention to that down here. And I said, I don't care. I'm going to do a hunger strike. And so, without knowing the first thing about hunger strikes, and this was before you had cell phones, so I didn't even have a cell phone. I decided all you needed to do was go without food. But I knew enough about my own self to know if I slept on that idea, if I gave it a great deal of thought, the next morning I was going to wake up and say, thank God I didn't do that hunger strike. So I knew I had to act on that deep conviction. And so I found a reporter. I called her up and I said, I'm doing a hunger strike. And she said, when? And I said, right now. And I did. I got on a shrimp boat in Matagorda Bay and climbed on that boat and determined I was not going to get off of that hunger strike until I forced Formosa to do everybody knows a complete environmental impact study. In
right.
that delay it, it would bring in agencies, it would bring in public opinion, because up to this point, they didn't have to do nothing. And I remember when I was on that hunger strike and I was sitting in the middle of the bay, and the only people that knew I was on hunger strike was Formosa. And
Yeah.
they
And
would
Diane, I
morning.
hate to cut you off. We might
Oh,
need to start wrapping up, but I know it's a long story to tell.
yeah, yeah. Okay. Well, basically, in 2 weeks of a hunger strike, I got exactly what I wanted. So the bottom line is for 35 years, I have been doing civil disobedience, and I have been working with the fishermen, and I have been working with the workers inside the plant who have become allies. So that's where I get my support. And that was where I was getting my information. That's
Yeah.
it.
Thank you so much, Diane. There's no more unpleasant job than cutting you off from your incredible, legendary struggle against Formosa. And I
Uh,
really encourage people to read one of Diane Wilson's many books because she's not just an environmental activist, but a prolific author. So I'll drop that in the chat as well. But we will have an opportunity for Q&A where people can ask Diane and others questions. So Nancy, I'm going to pass it over to you now. And just to save a little bit of time, I'm going to drop Nancy's intro in the chat. Nancy, if you can talk about the work that you've done against Formosa and why you came to the action at the headquarters on August 2nd.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you everybody for joining us. I am a refugee. I live in Vietnam, and after the war in 1979, I escaped from Vietnam with my two little children. We spent 22 days on the ocean. We have many storms, and we found 96 ships, big and small. Nobody rescued us, so I laid out on a boat with my two children on my arm, and we think that we're gonna die because I can feel the death, but my leg already numb and all that. So luckily, there was a small fishing boat came and rescue us, give us some food, and draw us into the shore of Thailand. I lived there for 8 months before I be sponsored by my sister to New Jersey. I went school there, and I moved to Houston because I cannot take the cold. Anyway, to me, environment is something that far away from my reach because I need to work uh, to job to take care of my baby and family. Not until I got older and I heard about the environmental disaster in Vietnam, and uh, the bishop of the four provinces affected by the uh, environmental disaster in the four provinces in central Vietnam went out, to oversee and came to talk to people in Europe and also in US. And I was one of them, listened to him, and he was asking uh, the Vietnamese community, in US and oversee, help the people. And here, what happened, I have to prepare this because I cannot remember all. So in 2016, Formosa, I think, a subsidiary of Formosa Plastic Group, discharged toxic chemical into the sea, killing 100 tons of fish and severely polluting the main environment across four central provinces of Vietnam. This resulted in the death of a diver, hundreds of people being hospitalized due to the food poisoning, and hundreds of thousands losing their job. After a period of denial, and cover up, Formosa finally admitted fault. Without conducting any survey to assess the actual damage, Formosa and the Vietnamese government unilaterally decided on compensation of 500 million under the condition that the Vietnamese government would protect Formosa's reputation both within Vietnam and internationally. Furthermore, the compensation money was given to the Vietnamese government, not to the victim. As a result, thousands of victims either receive no compensation or very little compared to their actual loss. When the uncompensated citizen attempt to file lawsuit in Vietnamese court, their case was dismissed. Upon appeal, the government to honor its agreement with Formosa to protect its reputation blocked the people from proceeding, assaulted, arrested, and imprisoned them. Some received prison sentences as long as 20 years. Over 20 people are still in prison today, and 100 more are in hiding as the government continue to pursue them. With the help of the overseas Vietnamese community as go out as environmental and human rights organization in Taiwan, in the US, and around the world, 7,874 victims filed lawsuit against Formosa in Taiwanese and the US court, and we submitted complaint to the United Nations Human Rights Committee. After successful blocking lawsuit within Vietnam, Formosa and Vietnamese government did not stop there. They continue to obstruct justice in Taiwan and the U.S. court, exploiting legal loophole. Formosa demand documents they knew very well that the victim could not provide, such as paperwork verified by the Vietnamese authority before being sent to Taiwan. After nearly 3 years of our advocating struggle, Taiwan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs allowed the victim to proceed without the Vietnamese government certifications. However, the documents still need to be notarized by the Taipei Economic and Culture Office in Hanoi. Once again, the Vietnamese government tried to block this by summoning and threatening the victim, and though assisting them, warning that they would be arrested and prosecuted. The police even issued multi-public announcement accusing those fighting for victims in Vietnam or abroad, like myself and my organization, of being fraudulent organization attempting to swindle the public. And they even have a cyber attack on me. They call me a scammer, prostitute, and all those. They try to denounce me. But I work with the victim. Especially, I have to talk with the children. They ask me where their parents. Their parents either have to be in hiding or in prison. They ask me when they can come back. So all those children keep me move on. So in summary, Formosa and the Vietnamese government have done everything possible to obstruct lawsuit outside of Vietnam after using force to suppress the victim case within the country. Justice for Formosa victim, along with Diane Wilson from San Antonio Waterkeeper and Sharon Lavine from Rai St. James, went to Taipei and spoke to Chairman Jason Lin at the Formosa Plastic Group shareholder meeting in June 2023. The chairman promised to talk with us, but that promise never materialized. Last fall, Diane Wilson held a 30-day hunger strike in front of Formosa Plastic Factory in Point Comfort, followed by 75 days came out with other members of Justice for Formosa Victim, San Antonio Waterkeeper, Rai St. James, and other people from communities at the same location to request again with meeting with Chairman Lin, but the request was rejected on the ground that a lawsuit had been filed, leaving nothing to discuss. On August 2nd, 2024, we participated in the protest in front of Formosa, USA headquarters. This is I think that the last resort we have to go through in hoping that we can have a meeting and talk to them. So we desperately for a meeting with Susan Wang, the chairwoman of Formosa Plastics USA, because Formosa in Taiwan repeatedly refused to engage in a dialogue to address the risk issue they caused for the victim, instead of finding every possible way to evade the responsibility. And you may ask me how in the world Formosa Plastic USA in Livingston, New Jersey have anything to do with the Vietnam incident. The reason because Formosa Plastic USA is the biggest investor. They are the people who decided how to market product from Formosa in Vietnam. How uh, the money, the industry, everything decide from Formosa Plastic USA in Livingston. That's why their responsibility is great. And then right now, we're trying to bring them to the court in the US, and we're actively looking for a law firm. Right now, we have a law firm from
And Nancy, you can start to wrap up when you're able. Just
okay.
save some
I
time.
wrap up now. Thank you, Matthew, for reminding me.
Yeah, and Nancy, thank you for your years of struggle in this movement. Nancy is another giant in the struggle for environmental justice for Formosa Plastics. So please show some love on the chat. And again, we'll save some time for Q&A so y'all can ask questions of Nancy as well. And that was a great segue, Nancy. Just, how does this fight connect to New Jersey? And so on that note, I'm going to pass it over to Paula. And Paula, I'm going to drop your bio in the chat as well. If you want to tell us why you got into this work, how you see your fight for environmental justice in Jersey connecting to the fight against Formosa Plastics, and why you took action with us earlier this summer.
Thank you, Matthew. It's so exciting to be with all of you. This is certainly a global fight against fossil fuels and against the use of plastics. And I'm so honored to be part of it. And I want to thank my friends from all over New Jersey. I see your names, and I thank you for the people from all over the country for being part of this briefing. And we do hope you'll come on Thursday to the virtual court. As part of the Empower New Jersey fight in New Jersey, here in New Jersey, we've been fighting against 7 fossil fuel plants, and we've been working around the state to stop, and we've stopped 3 power plants and pipelines, and we have a whole list of fossil fuel projects we're working together on, and people here have been part of those fights. So we're all in very, very good company. The last few years, we've been working with environmental justice leaders in the Ironbound of Newark to stop a gas power plant, the PVSC, Passaic Valley Sewerage Commission gas plant that would be in the Ironbound. They have 3 power plants already. They have an incinerator. They have heavy truck traffic from Port Newark. They have airplanes from Newark Liberty Airport. They have heavy industry. They have the remains of the old dioxin factory that made Agent Orange during the Vietnam War, and particulate matter still in the Ironbound community and in the Passaic River. And so it's a massive fight, and the Ironbound Community Corporation invited people from all over the state to support the fight to stop the 4th gas power plant. And, as in all of the communities that Diana is talking about, that the Rise St. James area in Louisiana and Vietnam, these communities are all dealing with they're massively overburdened by pollution and the health impacts from the pollution. And, we got to stop it. We've got to work together globally to stop it. And that's why we're all here. We have a governor here in New Jersey, Governor Murphy, who signed the environmental justice law that was hard fought for. And yet we're fighting day in and day out to get him. He could stop these gas plants, these power plants, these pipelines. He could do it in a split second, but he doesn't. And so we fight and we rally, and we have been marching and going to hearings, and it's an ongoing fight to try to stop the PVSC gas plant. I'm currently, actually, Sam DeFalco, who's the North Jersey organizer of Food and Water Watch, of which I'm a member, Sam said, "Oh, there's going to be an action at Livingston, at the Formosa headquarters. Would you like to do it?" Now, I was a teacher for 44 years, and I've transitioned to full-time activism, which is quite exciting. And so would you like to help at the action in Livingston? Because Diane and others really, really wanted to call attention to this company. And how many of you knew about Formosa Plastics? Ever heard of it? Yeah, well, we don't know about it. It's in New Jersey, but it's just the headquarters, and we don't know anything. But it was so important to Diane and others in this fight to raise the attention, that this evil evil company with over 600 violations, is right here and based here in New Jersey. And, one thing that gets me furious is that the money that Diane didn't win the money for herself. The money is in a trust fund that goes to there's environmental and other groups to, carry on the fight. But they're also, the company was supposed to stop polluting. They were supposed to follow the law. They were stop, destroying the land and the water and the air. And so there are now over, what is it, Diane, over 600 violations. And all they do is they pay the damn fine, excuse me, but they pay the damn fine and go on polluting, and they pay the damn fine again and go on polluting. So this is wrong. It's got to stop. And I am really, really happy to be part of this fight. And if we have to go to jail, we'll go to jail, whatever we have to do. But I know there are a lot of people here on this call and throughout New Jersey and around the world who will be supportive in this fight. And so, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Yes, please show Paula some love in the chat. Paula serenaded us, me and Alex Gordon.
Oh, yeah, we were singing in jail in the court in the
so Paula's also an incredible singer. But thank you for joining us in Livingston and in this fight. So next, folks, I'm going to pass it over to Robin Schneider, who was actually raised in New Jersey, but now working with Texas Campaign for the Environment. Please read about her bio in the chat. Robin, I'm going to ask you to share a little bit about where we're at now following this action, what's happening with our cases, and what's the call to action for folks here.
Sure. Well, it's nice to be back home in New Jersey virtually. Matt Smith and I actually went to the same elementary school in Wyckoff, New Jersey, many years apart. What is going to happen this Thursday, it's a pre-trial hearing, and the judge, his name is William Williams, is going to decide whether or not he will allow us to have experts submit testimony about the problems of plastic pollution, which includes plastic waste, plastic at the production end, at the end of life, the climate impacts, the impacts on public health and the environment. And so it's a very important hearing, and we want Judge Williams to see that there are a lot of people concerned about this issue and that it's not a normal traffic stop or the other issues that municipal court judges generally deal with. Our case is going to be heard by him. We don't have an option of a jury trial in this sort of a case. And this could be a very, very important decision about whether we can have experts, scientists, medical doctors and others give their testimony. Obviously, we have Diane Wilson, a community expert, and she and all the four of us in the Formosa Four will be able to testify, but we would like to have the support of other professionals in this field who've done a lot of scientific research on this as well. So we're asking people to show up on Thursday morning. It's 9 o'clock Eastern time. If you can, wear something red. So hopefully he'll get the point that these people are linked together. However, our lawyer has told us we cannot have like political signs or political t-shirts that the judge might think is disruptive. We had a pretrial hearing a couple of weeks ago, and this judge was very contentious and I would say arrogant. So we are walking kind of a fine line here. But I hope that if you can tune in, you will. But what we really need from people in New Jersey and in the nearby area is for people to show up when the trial is going on. We're going to want to have press conferences. We want to pack the courtroom when we're showing up in person, and we all have to show up in person for that. But we want to have lots of allies there in the courtroom and at our press events. and also helping to get the word out to other people in the area who can help out. It'll probably, maybe depending on if they allow us experts, that'll, could change how long the testimony is going to be. If we don't have experts, it might be shorter, although Diane could certainly talk for quite a while. So that's really why we wanted to kind of get people up to speed in New Jersey, because you may have been aware of their headquarters if you live near Livingston, but the factories, whether they're in Point Comfort or Taiwan or Vietnam or in Baton Rouge, where they violate the air pollution laws all the time, it's really hurting people, and it's hurting all of us. The amount of plastic, that 3% of all the plastic in the world is made by Formosa Plastics, and it's in all of our bodies. It's in the deepest part of the ocean. It's on the highest point on Earth. Plastic is everywhere. We need to deal with this, and we would love your help in doing that. So the link has been in the chat to sign up for the hearing, and we'll send you the Zoom link for the 9 a.m. hearing on Thursday Eastern Time. So let's give people a chance to ask questions.
Yeah. So I see 2 already. Thank you to all of our speakers. If people want to show some love for Robin in the chat, if you're planning to join us at the trial in New Jersey, please drop that in the chat as well. The first one is more practical, so I'll start with that. Shoshana is asking, how long will the pretrial hearing be? Will it start on time? Robin, do you want to take that one?
Sure. Normally, this judge on Thursdays is doing in-person work. So he, at our lawyer's request, he agreed to have this second pretrial hearing on Zoom, since 3 of the 4 of us are not in New Jersey and we're in Texas. So we don't know for sure that we're the only case that he's hearing on Zoom at 9 o'clock, or if there will be others. So if there are others, we could be wading through traffic tickets. But if not, it could go very quickly, or it could go a bit longer. We don't really know. That's unfortunately the situation. We don't really know, but it's possible we'll be the only one, the only case, and that it could come up quickly.
Thanks, Robin. We have another from David. Do permitting authorities have the discretion to deny permits to facilities that would adversely affect the air in populated airsheds? So if there's a risk to the community, regardless of the permit conditions, can they deny the permit for the sake of public health and welfare? And if so, why don't they usually reject them under such circumstances? Does anyone want to respond to that, Diane?
You're on mute, Diane.
Okay. First of all, I want to say that even one of my earlier lawyers that eventually went over to my Formosa, but in the beginning, it's like the permanent agencies are in Texas to give the permits, and generally they will get their permits no matter what, and even to bring up their environmental record is a very difficult feat. And also when I went to trial with Formosa on a clean water suit, the reason why I could do a citizen suit was because the EPA nor the state environmental agency had ever penalized them for any plastic violations. There was not one violation, and Formosa had never reported one. So in the clean water suit, if the feds and if the state don't do anything, a citizen can. So I filed a citizen suit. We found our own evidence. And matter of fact, when the judge ruled, what he said with the state was, he said either the state of Texas didn't know how to enforce Formosa or they weren't willing to. And that was even acknowledged in the ruling by the judge. So not in our lifetime down in Texas. that is, I mean, you can probably be almost as egregious as you can imagine, and you still get your permit, and you'll probably get a satisfactory on TCEQ comments.
So one thing I forgot to mention is that we are arguing a necessity defense, that we are not guilty because we needed to do this because nothing else has worked to stop Formosa from polluting or to stop the plastics industry more broadly from polluting. So I neglected to include that. We are using a necessity defense.
Yes, thank you, Diane and Robin. So I see a question from the chat about the immediate goal of the trial. Is it to get your trespassing dismissed? Does anyone want to speak to that question about the goals for the trial?
I think there were a number of goals. There were a number of goals, and I do know, because as for me, is like, it's important to me is that the publicity of what is going on with this company and what is going on with plastic in generally globally and how it's impacting people. That is one of my major goals, and it's also to bring out the crisis that's going on in Vietnam, the Formosa trying to expand to do one of the biggest. It's like they're one of the worst, and yet they want to build another one of the biggest in the middle of all of this pollution. So it's to stop Formosa Plastics and in some way to stop this ongoing harm that they have created, and bring justice to the people in Vietnam, to the people in Louisiana, and to stop Formosa's continual expansion in plastic and destroying the bays. That's a time goal.
Yeah. In addition, there is a big meeting on a plastics treaty happening in Korea at the end of November and the beginning of December. So this is a good time to get the word out about plastic pollution, to put pressure on the negotiators. We have the Biden administration did change its position from being in the bad camp that was just saying, let's deal with plastic once it, try and clean it up once it's produced, to being in the camp now that we need to address the manufacturing of plastics and stem the tide of manufacturing of plastics. But how much they stay with us on that is, we need to hold their feet to the fire. So that's kind of a broader context as well that we are operating in.
Yeah, thank you, Robin, for bringing that in. I'm going to raise one more question from the chat and then go to you, David, if you want to ask your question briefly out loud. So Pranita is asking, I'm wondering about the intersection of extreme weather events and the chemical contamination in these areas of Texas and Louisiana caused by Formosa Plastics and other companies. Would anyone like to take that on? Diane, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I can say that during Hurricane Harvey, Formosa Plastics was statewide one of the largest emitter of toxins during the hurricane, because a lot of these companies do not prepare for hurricanes, because production is, you're making money as long as you're ongoing. When you start shutting things down, you're not making money. So like I said, Formosa was one of the largest emitters during Hurricane Harvey. And I do know that if you look at some of the new statistics out on the climate vulnerability and talking about hurricanes, the rise and the intensity in storms and the level and the rise of the waves coming in is getting greater and greater. And, right now we're looking at, there's a hurricane right in the middle of the Gulf right now.
I think I like to echo.
Please.
It's me, Nancy. I like to echo Diane, idea that in the case of Vietnam, we done everything We went, we went to Taiwan to talk to German. We hunger strike, and then we request for the meeting. They don't want to go talk to us. They only want try to exploit or the loophole or the law or collaborate with a dictator regime to punish all the victim who want to, sue them and so far and so on. So we exhausted our effort. So that's why we have to do the August 2nd. And that what we need to do, we already did. I also send you my speech, so anybody need to, use it like, reference, you're welcome to. Yes.
Yes, please do, Nancy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
David, I think you might have the last question if you want to briefly
right.
share that with the
Well, my
speaker.
question may have two parts. There's a very quick question, possibly followed up. Is there any chance that this on appeal or something, this case will get before a jury trial?
Nope.
Oh, okay. Then I don't have my follow-up question.
Thank you, David. Yeah, this will be a bench trial, so we don't have the opportunity to come before a jury. So I think we have one more question from
That's
Pranita.
even on appeal. Even on appeal, there's no way to get to a jury. Okay.
Yeah. So on David, David, in the event of an appeal, the different levels of court will just review evidence that's already been shared, so we won't have the opportunity to
Right.
have another trial. But thank
Okay.
you for that question. So last question from Pranita. How can we follow what's going on in these frontline communities in the Gulf South who are suffering the effects of plastic pollution? I follow Rise St. James on social media, but are there any other ways to stay involved?
And then this is Wilma, can I say something at the end, please?
Sure. Yeah, we can have a minute for that as well. Yeah, Robin, Diane, Nancy, what are some good ways to stay involved with what's going on in the Gulf South?
Well, I know we got a website, and like I said, we have had when we fought from Formosa on their plastic, and this is pre-production plastic, so it's the pellets and the powder that's going on into the bay. So anyone interested in plastic, we have got hundreds of documents and testimony from workers inside the plant. And we have photographs of what plastic and powder looks like in the bay, and what it looks like in the vegetation, and what it looks like when you're trying to clean it up, So you can go to San Antonio Bay waterkeeper.org, and there's oodles of information.
Yeah, that's a great place to start. Thank you so much, Diane. Wilma will be closing out soon, but so glad that you could join us. And yeah, feel free to say a few words.
So I got the email that was screaming at me and saying, help, help, help for y'all four. So I have been working night and day on putting all the data together. Many years ago, Diane and I tried to get some of the workers by her facility to give blood to do vinyl chloride, and we never could get that because vinyl chloride is a known human cancer-causing agent, and it's released in huge quantities from the plastics manufacturing of it.
Absolutely.
And then when the facility proposed in St. James, I asked Mary Leor, who's head of lean, do you want to work on it? And she said no. That was the last time I asked her about any site, and I just went ahead and did it. But anyway, then I was chair of the board of Earthworks, and one of the Earthworks said, you have to do this. You have to help them, make them understand how they can participate and what data you need. And then the night of the hearing, they had hired a number of people from Tulane Environmental Law Clinic by one of the national environmental groups. And when I got to the hearing, I did workshops with the community constantly. I get the hearing, she goes like, oh, I'm so nervous. And believe me, I could have strangled her She was getting paid to do this, and she was telling me she's nervous, and she's the one that's supposed to be defending the community in all of this. But
Right.
as you know, we're still in court over that one. They haven't been able to start construction on the one in St. James. So, and then I did review a lot of the data in Vietnam, and some of them came over and visited, and I took them to see it.
Wilma is going to come and visit you.
Right, right. So I am now working night and day to hopefully get the right data in the files for the four of you. So when we ever go to real trial,
Thank
we'll
you.
have it
Thank you.
all. And Diane, thank you for sending me that section of data.
Oh, you bet. I've got piles of it.
Yeah, I know that. I
was
do too.
kidding.
And they break in my office all the time. So I'm having to take all of it home every night and all of it back every day. But we're
Let me
getting there. We're getting there. We're getting
Yeah.
let me tell all of you that when I came to Wilma office, I cannot walk through her office because of stack of documents. It's up to the roof. I still
right.
see put some on up the roof. I mean,
Right.
she had document, whatever, whoever need anything, she had it. Thank
Wow.
you, Wilma.
Wilma,
Thank you.
thank you so much for your
You're
support
welcome.
and your tireless labor.
Mm.
You've been in this fight for a long, long time. So just wanted to wrap us up. Thank you all for your questions, for taking time out of your night to join us here. I'm going to drop yet again this link in the chat. We really hope you come on Thursday. But more importantly, if you live in the Northeast, especially in New Jersey, please stay tuned and join us in person at the trial of the Formosa Four. This is really about continuing to build a movement that Diane and Nancy and Sharon Levine and many others have been involved in to fight for justice and accountability from Formosa Plastics. So we'll follow up over email to send some more information. But for now, yeah, thank you for your time. And I think I'll close out real quick with some words from Sharon Levine, who couldn't be here tonight, who said, I am the example that it does not matter who you are or where you live. You can take a stand for what you believe in, especially when it's the right thing to do. So thank you all for taking a stand with us, and we will see you in court.
Okay.
See you in
Thank you.
court.
Bye.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank
Bye,
you.
y'all.
Thank you so much.